Get a job in tech, episode 201. Recently, an individual told me about a job that is level 1 for Linux, like a Linux admin, basically. And a Linux admin can be anything. So you have your different flavors of Linux. So when you hear Linux, you think, oh my gosh, it's a lot. And if you're not in the IT industry and you want to start playing with it, it's very simple to install. You can watch a couple courses I have on YouTube or you can just YouTube anybody really, or go to Udemy and watch it as well. But it's just Linux, basic Linux admin. So you have Unix and Linux, right? What they call Unix and Linux. So Debian or Debian, however you want to call it, or BSD, that is a flavor of Unix, basically. So whenever you hear, oh, it's Unix, well, that's just Debian. That's an operating system. Now, Linux is like Fedora is an example of Linux, or Red Hat Linux is an example of Linux. IBM owns Red Hat Linux, and Ubuntu is Linux as well. Ubuntu is an easier one because you can download like say you can go to VirtualBox, download VirtualBox and for free, and put it on your computer, and then just stand up, go to Ubuntu, just Google Ubuntu or Ubuntu, download the ISO file, and just install it. And the good thing about Ubuntu, it looks like Windows, but it's not. So if you want to learn about Linux, here's a couple commands that you can try just to familiarize yourself. Let's say you're trying to, so you've gotten to the step where you've learned a little bit in Udemy or Coursera, and so you know a little bit about Linux. Fine, you've downloaded it, whatever. Now you want to become a little more comfortable. So you want to start off by, maybe you can go on a couple of interviews. Don't go on the interviews in the same area you're in. Go on interviews in some other state that you don't even want to. That is a different state, basically. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get experience. You're trying to get resume or job interview experience, essentially. So here's a couple things. So a basic Linux admin. I'm going to give you about, I don't know, 10 or 15 commands that you can start to familiarize yourself with, and maybe you can talk about them in a interview. I may not ask you a bunch of these, but some of you may ask yourself. Okay, so the first one is, again, these are just Linux commands that you can use, and then you can familiarize yourself, and then maybe if they ask you about an interview, you have an idea of what it is. The first one is ls, so Lima Sierra. This one is to list directories. So if you go to, like, say, it's same as like if you go to your C drive in Windows, where you're going to list all the directories in there. That command will list all the files of directories, basically. So that's the first command. The second command is mkdir, which is make directory, essentially. So a make directory is a folder. So when I say directory, I mean folder. mkdir, that's make directory or make a folder. Another command is rm. So that stands for remove. That means to delete a file or a folder or directory. We call them directories. And moving on to another one, you have pwd. So which is basically, it's the working directory. Where are you at? Are you in home? Are you in root? Are you in ls? Those are different directories that you find yourself in Linux. pwd. Another one is cd, stands for change directory. So cd / moves you back a directory, or moves you back a folder, essentially. Another one is mv, which it has two functions. You can move a folder or a directory. It's called folder. Or you can rename a folder. And this is Linux, of course, right? And then you have cp, which is copying files. So you're copying a folder or a file. Then you have touch, touch, which creates a text file, essentially. That's basically what it is, a text file. Then you have who am I, like who am I, WHOAMI, which tells you like who's the active. It's a username. What's username is being used right now? Like, who are you? That's your user account essentially. tar, which stands for tars, extract. You have like a tar file. So you have Windows, which is .exe files, and then you have Linux, which is usually like package files or RPM files or .tar files. And tar is ability to extract the compressed files or the tar file essentially. So you might have like a 1 gig tar file or something. You're going to tar it. So you use tar, and then basically you're extracting the files essentially that's in there. Tail, TAIL. That is, you're going to tail, like, for instance, logs. That's another one. You're going to tail logs. So tail, maybe you're troubleshooting something and you're going to tail a log. So what happens is, like, you're going to open up a directory, let's say, and it has like a log file. But that log file, it's always updating. It's updating. Maybe there's new data written to the log or whatever. What you do is you tail that log, and it's going to cause it to constantly display. It's like a running display of the log file, essentially. You have SSH. That's another one they're probably going to ask you about. So you're going to Linux, maybe you're going to SSH. So you have a Linux box on the network, your home network, and then you have a router, you have some other device connected to it, and you have SSH enabled. So you SSH, the command is SSH, and then the credentials, username, and then the username or the IP address and the username, and then you're in. Could be SSH. You can SSH into another Linux box as well once you set the IP address. That goes over to ifconfig. So ifconfig is the same as ipconfig in Linux, or in Windows rather. So ipconfig is Windows and ifconfig is Linux. That displays the interfaces and IP addresses of your IP address. UFW, that is for it's called Unix firewall, basically. So for instance, if you want to disable a port, UFW, and then you follow the commands after that. Another one is traceroute. That's the same as in Windows as well. Traceroute, TRACEROUTE. You're tracing an IP address from like what hop. So you're tracing whatever the IP address is, and you're trying to find out how many hops until it ends. The reason you do that is you're trying to find out, does it go through a router? Because you can usually tell the IP address by the IP address if it's a gateway, because it'd be like a .1 usually to the other side. And you'd use that for troubleshooting as well purposes. Sudo, SUDO. So sudo is escalation. So you might type, like, let's say you're going to know because you're in a $sign. So if you go user and you see $, well, you're not in sudo. So if you just type in sudo, enter, or sudo space sh, enter, you put a password in, obviously, and then you're going to have like it's not a hash, it is a number 3. What is that? Pound? Number. Looks like a number, essentially, number sign. And that's how you know when you're in sudo, or it's privileged mode, basically. So the command you're going to frequently use, which is the next one here. The frequently used command when you update. So Windows is different, obviously, than Linux. So the command you're going to use could be app-get space update, and that's going to update your Linux distro with all the updates, the latest patches, basically, from the repository that Linux has out there. The other one is app get space upgrade, which is just upgrading. Maybe you have Debian 11 and you're upgrading to Debian 12, for instance, let's say. Yeah, those are the type of things. So these are just a couple of different commands that you're going to know about. And hopefully when you get you went on Udemy and you've learned some knowledge, obviously, right? And now you just start with starting to go out in interviews, not in the same place you want the job, just somewhere else. So you can get some experience, and hopefully some of this will work out for you. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next one.